Okay, let's dive straight into this explainer. Imagine setting out for a dream vacation, completely surrounded by open ocean, only to realize there is an invisible killer trapped on board with you. It sounds like a movie, right? But that is exactly what happened in a chilling case that recently gripped global health officials and left the entire world watching in absolute suspense. Today, we're unpacking the deadly science behind the hantavirus and the mystery that turned a luxury cruise into a literal nightmare.
So, to really understand this threat, we have to rewind to April 1st, 2026. That's when a ship departed Ushuaia, Argentina, completely unaware of the invisible killer on board. This vessel was carrying roughly 150 passengers and crew members from 23 different countries. They were heading out for what was supposed to be a spectacular journey through the remote islands of the South Atlantic and Antarctica. And, for the first few days, everything was picture perfect. Passengers mingled, they threw parties, the atmosphere was incredible. No one had the slightest clue that their dream trip was about to transform into a harrowing fight for survival.
Section 1. The Cruise Ship Mystery.
Things escalated with terrifying speed. It started out small, just a mild headache and fever on day 5 for a 70-year-old Dutch passenger. He visited the ship's doctor thinking it was just a minor bug. But within days, he was struggling to breathe. His condition deteriorated so rapidly that by April 11th, he died right there on the ship. And the tragedy didn't stop there. When the ship finally docked at St. Helena, his grieving wife disembarked with his body to fly home. But right as she was about to board a flight from South Africa to Amsterdam, she suddenly collapsed at the airport and died the very next day. Meanwhile, back on the ship, a German woman fell ill and died just 4 days later. A total domino effect of collapsing passengers, and the mystery was deepening by the minute. It wasn't until May 2nd that the WHO was finally brought in. When the World Health Organization finally ran the tests, the diagnosis absolutely shocked the world. It was hantavirus. And the grim reality set in really quickly. There is no FDA-approved vaccine for this, and absolutely no proven antiviral cure. The infection was so severe that global health officials scrambled. Ports like Cape Verde flat out refused to let the ship dock. The vessel was essentially stranded, a floating hot zone that terrified countries around the globe.
Section 2. What is hantavirus? Discovered decades ago, you have to understand that this isn't just one single virus. It's actually a whole family of viruses carried by specific mice and rodents. Because modern medicine currently lacks a targeted cure, if you catch it, doctors are left with only supportive care as a treatment option, things like oxygen or dialysis, just to buy your body some time. Ultimately, it's a terrifying, solitary battle where your own immune system has to do all the heavy lifting to keep you alive. Now, the really crucial point here is this staggering 50% mortality rate. Think about that number for a second. 50%. If 10 people are infected, statistics say 5 of them might not survive. That makes it an incredibly lethal threat if contracted, and it's exactly why global health authorities treat any hantavirus outbreak with extreme urgency and caution.
To understand how it actually kills, we have to look at its 2 main variants. First, you have HFRS, which primarily hits Asia and Europe. This one attacks the kidneys and causes severe internal bleeding. Then you have HPS across the Americas, which is particularly horrifying. Patients often start with simple flu-like symptoms, but then, almost without warning, their lungs aggressively fill with fluid. Tragically, victims literally suffocate from the inside out.
Section 3. A history of outbreaks.
To figure out what happened on that ship, we need to realize this virus has a bizarre, quiet historical rap sheet. Back in the 1950s, during the Korean War, it totally mystified American doctors when over 3,000 soldiers suddenly experienced kidney failures and internal bleeding. It killed 15% of the infected, and doctors initially suspected chemical warfare. It wasn't until the 1980s that South Korean Dr. Ho Wang Lee officially identified and named it after the Hantan River. Decades later, it was even found hiding among traditional rat catchers in India. This silent killer has literally been stalking humanity globally, far under the radar.
But the deadly 1993 Navajo outbreak in the U.S. brilliantly solved a huge part of the puzzle. Healthy young people in the Southwest were suddenly dying, and modern scientists were totally stumped. But Navajo tribal oral history held the answer. They explained this ancient ecological cycle. An El Niño weather event brings heavy rains, which leads to a massive bumper crop of pinyon pine nuts. Those nuts feed the local mice, causing an absolute explosion in the mouse population. More mice means a drastically higher chance of human contact.
directly triggering a viral outbreak, an ecological chain reaction resulting in human deaths.
Section 4. The Andy strain.
But wait, standard hantavirus comes directly from mice, right? So how on earth did passengers on a metal ship in the middle of the ocean catch it from each other? Well, the answer lies in a terrifying 1996 discovery in southern Argentina, the Andes strain. Until this point, scientists confidently believed you could only get hantavirus directly from a rodent. The Andes strain completely shattered that assumption. It is the only strain in the hantavirus family documented to spread directly from human to human, completely changing the risk profile of the disease.
And the mystery of our ghost ship is solved exactly here. Before the cruise even began, that Dutch patient zero, the 70-year-old man, went on a birdwatching tour in Ushuaia. That tour took them right into a landfill absolutely teeming with rodents carrying the Andes strain. They were exposed, infected, and then immediately brought that invisible time bomb onto an isolated cruise ship packed with 150 people. Now, what's incredibly fascinating and, honestly, an unbelievable stroke of dark luck is this single tiny number, 1. Infected individuals only have a highly contagious transmission window of roughly 1 single day at the very start of their illness. If that Dutch couple had boarded the ship just a few days later, that transmission window would have completely closed. The virus might never have spread to the other passengers. It was the perfect, tragic timing that allowed it to jump from person to person.
Section 5. The next global pandemic. So with the ship finally docked in Tenerife, Spain on May 10th, sitting at 10 cases and 3 deaths, the world was holding its breath. Everyone was asking the ultimate question, is this the start of the next global pandemic? Well, fortunately, the WHO considers the global pandemic risk to be very low. Unlike COVID-19, it is not airborne. You can't catch this simply by breathing the same air in a grocery store. It requires close, prolonged physical contact, like sharing a bed or providing extreme close care. Couple that with that tiny one-day transmission window, and the mathematical chance of this sweeping the globe is actually incredibly small.
However, we definitely cannot afford to ignore this severe wake-up call. With a massive El Niño expected this year, we know exactly what that does to rodent populations. The risk of localized outbreaks is rising, and given that terrifying 50% mortality rate, turning a blind eye just isn't an option. Section 6. Prevention and Survival. Okay, so let's dive into how you can actually protect yourself. Because remember, your immune system is your only internal defense. Since the virus originates from rodent droppings, basic, actionable hygiene steps are absolutely critical. We're talking about sealing all gaps in your home so mice can't get in, not leaving food exposed, and properly dealing with garbage. And if you are cleaning out a dusty old attic or storage area, assume there might be mouse droppings. Wear an N95 mask and gloves. It sounds incredibly simple, but these pest control measures are literally life-saving. Don't give the virus a chance to enter your respiratory system. For decades, this virus has quietly infected people without making major headlines. We don't have a miracle pill, and we don't have a vaccine. But now that you understand the mechanics of how this outbreak happens, you actually have the power to stop it. Awareness is genuinely our best and only weapon. It's all about knowing how it spreads and taking those actionable steps to cut it off at the source before it ever reaches you. As we watch the final passengers evacuate that tragic cruise ship, it leaves us with one incredibly vital thought to carry forward into our changing world. We've seen firsthand how a simple bird-watching tour can spark an international crisis, and how a tiny shift in weather patterns can awaken a dormant, highly lethal threat. The science is clear, the history is documented, and the preventative steps are entirely in your hands. So, looking at the environment around you today, are you truly prepared?